So we don't need to go into ancient history to think about the changes that really matter for us. So if we just go back to the early 1900s, this was the beginning of the electric light bulb. And prior to that, we didn't really see shift work. And then we move forward a little bit more and we see the development of antibiotics, which changed the world and has saved millions of lives, billions of lives potentially. Then we had the industrialization of our food supply, whereas not that long ago, the bulk of the food that we ate was raised fairly locally. It was consumed rather locally. We had a seasonal variation to it. We didn't always have oranges and watermelons around and stuff like that, in the dead of winter. If we go back just a little bit, when I was born, this was pre-information age. So people watched TV. There were 3 channels when you got up and turned on the TV. And then with the development of the information age, we've seen a dramatic decrease in the amount of physical activity that people do. And then now in the modern information age, we can work from home, order our food to our front door, never go outside, go online and tell our doctor that we have a sore throat and get antibiotics delivered to the front door. We could construct a life where we literally never have any meaningful social interaction. We try to paper over that with social media. And so in a very brief period of time, really in the period of one very long lifetime, or certainly 2 generations, longer lifetimes, we've seen every facet of our lives change in really profound ways and in a larger way than happened in the totality of the rest of history.
The epidemic of chronic illness has not yet spread to developing nations. It is really a problem in modern industrialized world. So the question is, why are autism, ADHD, asthma, autoimmune diseases, allergies, why are these so endemic in modern industrialized world? Why is it that we see so many kids in the United States, in the UK, in Australia with these skyrocketing rates of every chronic illness out there? And the reason why is because we live differently.
Maybe I've got a couple cool golden nuggets of things I can share clinically that I've done to reverse my health problems and reverse other people's health problems. But what about people that don't have health problems in the first place? What are they doing that we're not doing? I think there's other puzzle pieces out there that we just don't truly understand yet. And if we go study these people before they're gone, we've got a good chance of really setting the tone for the future.
It's funny. We thought the same thing. So we did it. In the spring of 2017, we traveled around the world to find out what we can learn from those who appear to be aging successfully without chronic disease.
There are these pockets of people that are supporting each other, that know each other's families, that have each other's backs.
They're intimately involved with the plants. They're intimately involved with each other. When someone is stressed, when someone's having a challenge, they all band together, they help each other. They laugh a lot, they have fun, they know how to don't take life too seriously. All these things are important.
Health just seems to happen to these folks in a very natural way. They live in communities, they're in relationships with people. They don't stress out about small things.
My guess would be they're not so attached to being on iPhones and iPads and computers. My guess would be they're not on Facebook trying to prove, defend, get their needs met. And they have a much deeper feeling of acceptance from themselves and everyone that's around them.
They don't think about health. Health is the default option for them by virtue of the way that they choose to live their lives.
Όλοι μας βοηθούσαν αυτοί γιατί βρισκόμαστε όλοι μαζί παίρναμε τις αποφάσεις τι θα φτιάξουμε, πού θα πάμε, τι θα κάνουμε, όλο το χωριό.
La collaborazione fra tutti, ti sentisci andare d'accordo, non bisticciare mai, sempre andare d'accordo nelle cose sul lavoro e su tutte le cose. Pace, lavoro e giustizia.
Να σας πω, έχει ιδιομορφία το νησί μας, γιατί δεν φτάνουν ποτέ οι άνθρωποι στα άκρα. Υπάρχει σύμπνοια, υπάρχει αλληλεγγύη, υπάρχει όλα αυτά που μπορούν και συνδέουν τους ανθρώπους και αποφεύγονται οι εχθροπραξίες, όλα αυτά.
Quant'anni te? 150. Sono giovane. Mi sembra giovane.
Si sente.
Non lo so neanche io.
Pura vida es sentirse uno bien. Pues es de pura vida es sentirse bien en todo, no tener problemas, no tener nada y eso es pura vida. Me siento pura vida.
What are all of these people doing? They're all living very similar lifestyles. And what they're doing is they're living on this planet the way we evolved to live on this planet.
Io conosco solo i cibi naturali. Anche ora se potessi mangerei solo quello che prenderei io in campagna e mangerei il pane buono che non esiste più. Niente supermarket. Elettricità non c'era dappertutto, c'era solo nei grossi centri. Nei piccoli paesi c'era la candela, il lume e quindi tramontare a letto. Non c'era certo televisione, non c'era la radio, non c'era niente.
Ah, sí, le gusta, pues, pero veo una vueltilla y ya volvería, ya andando un ratito, yo me siento bien. Pero cuando voy allá a la finquita que tenemos, agarro un machete y ando trozando matones ahí. No pienso en nada que lo que ando haciendo, la mente no está alcanzando cosas de más allá, ¿no? Está en lo que está.
Ma i giovani non lavorano oggi come prima. Prima facevamo un lavoro pesante e camminavamo a piedi, ora si cammina in macchina, ora diventati tutti, sono nati in macchina, sono nati a cavallo, sono nati a sedia, diciamo. Ma allora erano nati in mezzo alla povera, per dire, hanno sacrificato le nostre mamme per sollevare i bambini, le famiglie.
Guarda, io ho fatto tanti lavori, quasi tutti i lavori che esistono. Ho dato a contadino, sono andato in bicicletta, io a Guadvilla, con 90 kg di inerzia, tutti i giorni. Partivo alle 5 di qui e arrivavo alle 8 a Guadvilla. Passavo la merce e me ne venivo.
Guarda, io auguro sempre di obbedire all'anziano che sa per esempio una certa esperienza e già sa dove mettere le mani e non lasciarsi assassinare da nessuno. Lui deve governare se stesso, per esempio. Praticare con gente, per esempio, scusa, buona. Perché il proverbio dice chi va con zoppo impara a zoppicare.
I think when we're pursuing this journey of longevity, we have to find something to live for. We have to find our purpose, and our purpose might be to find our purpose. That might be our initial purpose. Otherwise, I think the pursuit of longevity is just a fancy way of saying, I'm scared of death.
If we were taught death and life is this beautiful story here on earth, the natural cycles, we would just the same not have as much fear and or shame around what death represents to us.
Δεν σκέφτηκα ποτέ μου το θάνατο. Αυτός δεν τον αποφεύγω με τίποτα. Και το Θεό μπάρβα να έχω. Άμα θα έρθει η ώρα μου, σκέφτομαι μόνο τι δουλειές θα κάνω.
I mean, I know I'm going where everyone else is going. Can I maximize the time? Either be it the time in the relationships with the people close to me, the food that I eat, the experiences that I have.
Are we running from death or are we chasing health? And this to me is a pivotal and imperative question to answer. I do not think that death is an avoidable tragedy. And that's how we treat it in the West. We treat death like it's an avoidable tragedy. But if we're looking at longevity as a means by which to optimize our life, to optimize our health, to start living more in accordance with nature, then this seems like a very worthwhile pursuit.
You know, one of the things people often don't realize is that we're biological organisms and that we have to follow the laws of nature. That we wouldn't feed our dogs things that we feed ourselves, right? But we feed them to our kids. And we try to ignore the limits of our human biology and not tend to the things that are going to create health.
I don't think longevity in and of itself is a core value. Quality of life is a core value, and that has many elements, one of which is health.
Es para vivir calidad de vida. Es lo que necesitamos.
It's really easy to rack up a score and say, look, I lived till this number. But what does that mean? Empty years are empty years, right? And so were they filled with passion? Were they filled with time with family and loved ones? What was your purpose? What were you doing? Did you enjoy the sunshine? Did you move around like you wanted to? And so these types of things are way more important than this idea of longevity, just extending life for just that reason.
Our primary focus instead of longevity, there should be happiness, because that happiness is the key to longevity versus the opposite. Living longer won't make you happy, but being happy will allow you to live longer.
Who cares if I can extend a telomere if I don't smile, laugh, giggle, and enjoy every moment of my life every day?
The goal really in our life, when you look at everything we try to accomplish, is to try to be like a child. It's to try to be completely satisfied in your life. Know that your needs are going to be met. Have complete confidence in who you are. Be in love with who you are, what you look like, not wanting to change a thing. Look in the mirror and just enjoy yourself. Children do that. We're always trying to get back to that state of a child. When we get back to the state of a child, now that youthful glow, that joy, that laughter, that energy that attracts us to human anyway, is now all culminated within our body, and that truly is what propels us into longevity.
We are in the era of the microbiome now, and we are really at its infancy, even though for functional medicine we've been doing this for 30 years. And effectively, we kind of didn't know all the reasons why everything was working, and now we're learning and growing about it. And it's just an extraordinary time.
The critical nature of the microbiome. If there's one organ that's most important, it's the microbiome.
We really are in the area of research where the microbiome is really hitting all fields. So the microbiome health is impacting cardiology, neurology, immunology, endocrinology, that they're finding your gut microbiome can impact all these different disease processes. Now, they're still trying to figure out how, but they do know that the more diverse your gut is, that the more protective effects you have through all these different diseases.
For me, our body is not belonging to us. I think our body is belonging to our microbiota. So the question is why we have this huge amount of bacteria. Because they play more strategic role than before.
We have to really change the way we look at ourselves. When we look at our chromosomes, we've got 22,000 functional genes. Sounds like a lot, but you compare that to a rice plant or an earthworm that has double the amount of genes, we don't start to look that cool anymore, right? And so we're like, how do we conduct all the functions that we do on a daily basis with such limited number of genes? And as it turns out, the microbial genes within our body amount to about 3.3 million in total. So we've got 150 times more bacterial viral DNA in our body than human DNA. And it's looking like 99% of metabolic function, things that we do on a daily basis that make us human, are coded for by bacterial and viral DNA. So we can barely do anything for ourselves.
So when we think of health, we ask the question, why is food so important? Why is eating so important? And the obvious, response might be, well, because if we don't eat, then we die of malnutrition, and we just run out of gas. But for most individuals, starvation is not the big issue. The issue is really, what does food mean in the broadest context of nourishment? And it's not just nourishment solely. from the vitamins and minerals, protein, carbohydrate, and fat that are present within those foods. It has to do with the whole process of being in touch with the environment. Where did the food come from? How was it produced? We are part of it. We then are produced from it. Our body is made up of it.
And this includes diet and lifestyle and emotion and community, everything that we can think of. We have to clear the muddy water. We have to think what works for my body, for my physiology, my ancestry, the situation I'm in.
We often eat when we're rushed, in a car on the way to work, or watching the news, or some YouTube video on internet, or reading something while we're eating. Many of us are not actually chewing our food because we're eating while we're driving, or we're in that fight or flight, aroused state. A lot of people are eating most of their meals alone, which I think is another factor, again, because we're hardwired for social connection and interaction.
Sì, senz'altro. Si poteva parlare, e i bambini era il momento che potevi parlare con i genitori, che magari il giorno lavoravano, invece a tavola tutti insieme, normale.
Eravamo sempre 10 e 12 a mangiare, sempre, a tutti i momenti, il giorno, di notte, sempre. C'era una festa perché si collaboravano, tutti contenti. Quando erano a casa erano tutti contenti.
The first thing I noticed, for kids especially, is that they are not as active. That's the first thing. They don't, I don't know if this is gonna sound strange, honestly, but they don't know how to move even. Something very simple, like, for example, getting into the kayak. Like sitting in the kayak, it becomes a 30-second task. While kids here at the age of 5 or 6 are already just climbing trees and getting their fruit, you know?
So they're climbing up these coconut trees, pulling down these
anything, mango, this papaturro tree, whatever, you know, like these kids are really like ready to go. But these other kids, it don't matter, it ranges from very early ages, like 5 to even teenagers, they just don't know how to sit into the kayak. So when it comes to something more complicated, like coming out of the truck even, they just have odd motion. I don't know how to say it. They are very, like with the simple tasks, they are not acting like kids.
You know, if I could lift a heavy weight off the ground, but I couldn't pick up my friend off the floor who's injured, there's a problem there. There's a disconnect between what's actually a functional movement and what's practical. So it started making me think about there's something more than functional movement. There's practical movement. There's a wide variety of movement patterns that we need to be engaging in. That physical activity isn't just about fitness. It's about our ability to interact with our environment. So we'll do a couple of problem play games. So one's like playing tag.
Okay,
all right? So you might remember this. So basically it's going to be tag between the hip and the knee. All right? So first person to 10. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 1, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nice. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good stuff. As soon as I'm off, I'm still trying to keep on, yeah. Okay? Yeah. Nice. So you don't want to take part?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Good, nice, I like that. That's a good one.
I'm actually breathing hard. Everybody's looking.
So as you know, grip strength is one of the things that researchers track for longevity. So if you can maintain grip strength, you're less likely to die.
And we just heard from Michel Pavon, who shook hands with an 80-year-old in Greece and said his hand hurt for 3 days.
Wow.
Because his grip strength was so good.
Yeah.
So.
And yeah, it's important. It's an important test. So it's almost like a re-education.
Well, and what's interesting is you start to find your leverage points, right?
Yeah.
Learn the leverage and the height game and where your center of gravity is.
Exactly.
You start to learn that a little bit better.
So yeah, you learn when to be relaxed and when to actually hold some tension.
Yep.
And again, it doesn't have to become aggressive or combative, but you know, that kind of rough housing, as you call it in the US, or rough and tumble, as we say here, you know, just like you'd play these kind of games when you were young. You know, young boys used to play this all the time, but now it's like you're not allowed to. Do you know what I mean? You'd be play wrestling, you wouldn't have any technique, you wouldn't be taught, you wouldn't know what center of gravity was, nothing. So what we're going to do is, we're going to, again, standing start, I'm going to push you back, but this time, rather than you trying to stay static, I want you to absorb and kind of step back.
Go with it.
And go with it. So if you push me, I'll show you what I mean. So it's going to be like so. Okay, but and you can use as much, and you're going to try and land softly, but you're going to put in even more effort in. But it's my job. If I stay here, you probably break my back. So it's, so it's my job to kind of absorb it, preempt it, absorb, step back. Okay, so you keep going with it. And then we'll just keep. It's literally we'll be kind of dancing back and forth. Yeah. So be like so, and then nice. Okay. Good. Nice. Yeah, so something like this, I can get kind of a clean response using this. So somebody who's never done any kind of athletics or can't swing a kettlebell or clean a kettlebell, they can do something like this. And you get the same type of physiological response.
When you get somebody that's about the same physical activity as you, it becomes this very good dance.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But again, what was that, 15 seconds maybe?
Yeah.
You start breathing a little bit, right? If I check my pulse, I bet it's going pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Right, it's not that hot outside, but yet I'm sweating a little bit.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much, it seems to.
Exactly.
To work out.
Doesn't take much at all. We were designed to move. Why? You know, to hunt and gather foods, to build shelter, to protect those nearest and dearest to us, to be able to walk great distances, to be able to climb trees, to track animals on the ground, to be able to jump and to carry and to lift. I mean, there's all these movement patterns that I'm like, oh wow, there's so much that we should be engaging in.
We don't have a vision for our world. You know, what's gonna happen, 50, 100 years from now, when our kids are standing around? We've had a dozen more oil spills, and agriculture has taken over most of our land and plowed over most of our trees and cultivated most of our soils. What's that gonna look like?
This organism, just this planet, not to mention the rest of the universe, but just this planet is way smarter than we are.
Unfortunately, we've been performing a series of large, uncontrolled experiments for the past several decades where we release all kinds of stuff into the environment, have no idea how it's going to impact us or our children, and the preliminary research on that is not encouraging, shall we say.
仕組みをわからない感謝ができてない人間があまりにも多いね。
My father was the president of the Farming Association where I grew up on Vancouver Island, and he said, Paul, it's the strangest thing. When we moved here in '72, we used to get attacked by insects like crazy, and he said there's hardly any insects here anymore. Very recently, a paper came out that had the word Armageddon, something like Armageddon may be near, and the collective entomologists found that in the last 50 years, there's been a 75% reduction in insect traffic around the world. And I shared that research with my dad, and he got emotional, and he said, we're in deep is exactly what he said.
I think one of the biggest mistakes we've made as a people, not just in the US, but worldwide, is not understanding the deep connection between human beings and our environment, and that if we change the environment, we are changing ourselves.
Την κατάσταση να οδεύει προς το καλό. Βλέπω ανισορροπίες. Βλέπω τον κόσμο αναστατωμένο, πότε πολέμους, πότε έτσι, πότε αλλιώς, εισβολές, εκτελέσεις, δολοφονίες, αυτά δεν μ' αρέσουν.
There are two things on our planet that really drive everything that's alive. One is the oceans, the other is the soil. And we spray 1.5 billion pounds of glyphosate on our soil every year right now because we don't like to pick weeds.
There is no such thing as away, right? We can't really throw things away. We're just moving them from one place to another. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of the chemicals that are being released from an industrial standpoint. We have polar bears in the Arctic that have non-stick coating chemicals, perfluorinated chemicals in their bodies because these chemicals migrate around the planet.
We're often chasing, and I think this is something that's unfamiliar to most physicians, is that they're often chasing health restitution through the use of a whole food diet, but they're failing to understand that those foods may be derived from soils and from a growing environment that hasn't placed that plant under enough stress to provide adequate support for its immune system. So we then fall into, it's a fiber, it's a caloric element, but it doesn't contain these metabolites or these compounds that will be metabolized as viable things. And that misses a great chunk of our history. You know, you and I emerged from the generations of people who survived by instinctively cultivating foods that contain these compounds in order to survive more efficiently. Animals do it, humans do it, and yet we're now in a position where we can manipulate those plants to the point where sweetness is favored over bitterness. And in doing so, we remove an historical legacy of immunological communication between us and the plant world. If we want to live a healthy 100 years, we have to do that in cooperation with the organisms that we share our body with. If we're no longer providing them with the substrates necessary for them to live a happy life, it's like being an employer and not paying your staff. You do not get the job done. Unhappy staff means a poor productivity. Unhappy bacteria means poor health. And driving that, no matter when we go to the best shops and we choose the brightest colouring looking vegetables, if those vegetables have had a stress-reduced existence, their molecular messages are diminished in their viability.
So if we try to protect plants from pests using chemical pesticides and herbicides, and don't give plants the right soil that allows them to produce their own natural chemical defenses in the way of colors, polyphenols, and phytochemicals, we lose out on some of the beneficial compounds these plants would produce. These are the compounds that then communicate to our microbiota and our mitochondria to improve our immune function and facilitate health. In essence, as Dr. Ash stated, these plants are transferring knowledge to us in the way of microbes, plant compounds, and microRNA. Without this transfer of knowledge from plants about the local environment, the epigenetic expression of our microbiota and our mitochondria and our DNA will often result in imbalanced function given the context of our altered environment.
We are wired to be in the cycle of the sun. Our biology has a 24-hour cycle, and if we don't honor that, we don't have health. And so sleep is just not optional, it's not negotiable.
And if you're not getting enough of that sleep, it's kind of like having a computer that you never defragment, that you never clean up, and everything bogs down and runs slower. So for me, I think sleep it's like our time to defragment and kind of reboot the computer.
We know, for example, that lack of sleep or sleep problems, insomnia, is one of the biggest predictors of burnout syndrome and chronic fatigue. So that's clearly a big issue for a lot of people.
You know, sleep is really interesting because it's probably one of the best bang for your buck health tools. You just have to lay there, close your eyes, and do nothing. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can do it for as long as you need to. And it's just really difficult for people to do that these days. You know, I think a lot of it is culturally ingrained. We've made sleep lazy because of corporate culture that we're in, and especially in North America. You know, sleep is something that is frowned upon versus in other cultures where it's actually revered.
What circadian rhythms do is they help to look at past behavior to then try to predict a physiologic response for that time of day. And that's why we don't want, you know, the body doesn't try to have you get up at 7 times during the night while you're sleeping to go to the bathroom. So you feel hungry during the day, you feel like going to the bathroom during the day, and at night there's a whole other set of physiological activities that take place that are suited for that time of day.
Well, it turns out that since everything you do is designed for rest and recovery at night and function performance during the day, if you break those cycles with junk light, or with making yourself too hot when it should be cool at night, or with eating a huge meal after the sun went down, your body is expecting to eat during the day and hide at night. That's what bacteria did 2 billion years ago in the ocean. Same thing keeps happening.
And then during the day, you know, we actually have to have our exposure to sunlight. Vitamin D is central to us. And exposure to sunlight, actually, if you take a look, you know, the dawn has more blue light in it, the sunset has more red light in it. It actually determines also how our bodies respond to it in terms of cycles.
One of the things we were excited to check out in Icaria were the hot springs.
When we would visit each one of these hot springs, we were surprised to see that there weren't a bunch of people there. They were empty. So much so to the point where we had to actually search to find one of the hot springs because there were no signs, there were no people, there was no infrastructure to support some sort of tourist attraction. So they still existed in their natural form, and it was amazing to be able to experience these, much like Icarians must have hundreds or thousands of years ago.
Υπάρχει λοιπόν μονάδα, υπάρχει πηγή που έχει 600 μονάδες ράδιο. Υπάρχει άλλη πηγή, αυτές που λειτουργούν τώρα λέω, που έχει 300 μονάδες ράδιο. Υπάρχει άλλη πηγή που έχει 160 μονάδες ράδιο. Υπάρχει άλλη πηγή που έχει 75 μονάδες ράδιο.
What we learned was that each one of them had different properties that they could be utilized for healing. Some were good for the skin, some were good for rheumatism. They all had their unique characteristics.
Ναι, πώς, πάνε πολύ. Λένε πως κάνουν καλό. Τώρα, εγώ προσωπικά δεν έχω πάει. Αλλά έχω ορισμένες περιπτώσεις που πηγαίνανε ανθρώποι που ήταν σχεδόν, τους κρατούσαν να πάνε και βγαίνανε καλά.
One of my favorite quotes by Krishnamurti is, "It's no sign of health to be well adapted to a profoundly sick society." And what we are expecting of not only ourselves as adults, but certainly of our youth, is that they show no signs that anything is wrong with our educational system, with our family units, with the total fracturing and dissolution of our community networks, with our food supply, with exposure to chemical toxicants everywhere. And because of my success reversing and disappearing these disease labels, I know that they are actually a wise response to something real.
The rates of chronic conditions in children have skyrocketed. I mean, it's an exponential growth. In the 1960s, you had less than 10% of kids with some kind of chronic illness diagnosis. Today, you have more than half. It's 54% of American kids have at least one chronic illness diagnosis. So that's an exponential rate of increase in such a short period of time. And that's all the kids who have diagnoses. And there are many more kids who actually have what I call the soft signs of being impacted and basically not being healthy, but they're not necessarily diagnosed. So these are the kids who have undiagnosed anxiety or, insomnia and they can't sleep, or the kids who have food sensitivities and react to the food they're eating, but they don't have a food allergy diagnosis. So I would say, in my estimation, the vast majority of American children have some kind of chronic illness, and that actually extends to the industrialized world. It isn't just the United States, but we're doing the best job of making our kids sick. Because there has been a slow, incremental increase in the number of children that are impacted, we don't see it. We don't see it as the epidemic that it is. So while you can look at discrete epidemics like the epidemic of autism or the epidemic of asthma or the epidemic of ADHD, they're actually all one epidemic. They're the new childhood disorders. And it seems as if they're normal because they're so common.
You look at the most recent autism statistics and it's beyond alarming. The trajectory is something that's just untenable.
And the saddest thing to me is that the default approach to these conditions is just prescribing medication. I mean, that's true for all chronic disease, but it's even more glaring with these behavioral disorders. I think we can all agree it's not natural that kids have these disorders. It's common, but it's not normal. There's a big difference between common and normal. We have to remember that. Behavioral disorders are a direct result of poor diet, exposure to environmental toxins, both in utero and in early childhood development, disrupted gut microbiome, lack of certain nutrients, but sometimes excess of other nutrients. So there are tons of things that have, and if you look in the research, those are all there. I'm not just making this up. I mean, there are studies that support all of these connections, but for some reason, we're not looking.
Στο σπίτι τα έκαμε η μάνα μου τα παιδιά στο σπίτι. Με μια μαμή. Πρώτα είχαμε δάσκαλο δικό μας, μετά την κατοχή, παπά δικό μας, πρόεδρο δικό μας και μαμή δικιά μας στο χωριό. Τώρα τους λέω που είσαστε ξευγενισμένοι, τι έχετε στο χωριό που δεν έχετε τίποτα.
Mire, eso es realmente, ¿cómo diría yo? Impresionante, porque las mujeres siempre parían en casa. Bien, había unas señoras que llamaban comadronas, que eran las personas que ayudaban a nacer al bebé. Asistían, nada más que la mandaban a llamar. En Nicoya hubo una señora que llamó Doña Isidra. Esa señora trajo al mundo, ayudó a nacer a cualquier cantidad de gente increíble.
Natural, con una partera, con una señora que las ayudara. Aquí no había nada, aquí no había un médico, aquí no había nada, era una señora que ayudaba a otra señora.
Women have been birthing on their own and with midwives, I mean, since the beginning of time. This is how things have been done. A lot of times what we see in America is that, you know, physicians are actually telling patients it's dangerous to birth at home. You could have a complication. You know, there are complications that come with birth, but what we actually see is that your risk in birthing in a hospital for complications can actually be a lot higher. And the reason for that is because the respect for the body is lacking a lot in these institutions. And that's really something that I think we all need to stand back and examine. In that, you know, this was born out of me being in such this hardcore science background and doing recombinant DNA technology, manipulating genes on the cellular level to make them express whatever that I wanted in the organism. I had to stand back and recognize that we weren't respecting nature as a whole. And we've forgotten that at some point, that there's a lot of innate wisdom within the body.
From pregnancy to early childhood, this is the aspect of longevity that is often overlooked. A lot has changed in the West over the last 100 years, but one thing hasn't. Parents still want the best for their kids. So how do we take lessons from the past and carry those forward into the future in order to improve the health of our children in the coming generations?
Being healthy in the West is pretty revolutionary, really. And I think that's the problem. Look, my family and I'm a father, I've got 2 young kids, I'm very, very motivated to try and take all the information that I've learned over the last few years and really implement it with my family. Why wouldn't I do that? But it's hard. The reason it's hard is because by doing that, I'm scared that in some ways they're being socially isolated from the culture around them. So how do I bring up my children in that culture, protect them, but not isolate them? I ain't got the answer to that.
And our system right now is not set up to look at the root causes for any chronic condition. Right now, the doctor is saying, there's no evidence to show that works. That's total baloney. There's tons of evidence to show that diet changes work. There's tons of evidence to show that environment matters. It's just that our system isn't set up that way. Our doctors were not trained to understand and know the importance of environment.
Αυτό το βρήκαμε έθιμο παλιά από τους προγόνους μας. Τότε ήταν ήταν και ωραία πανηγύρια, γιατί δεν ήταν αυτή η πολυκοσμία. Το κάναμε και για λόγους οικονομίας. Αυτά τα χρήματα που μαζεύαμε τα διαθέταμε για το χωριό. Και όλα τα πανηγύρια που γίνονται για ακόμα για αυτόν τον σκοπό. Βέβαια. Και γλεντάμε κιόλας. Βλέπουμε ανθρώπους από άλλα χωριά, γίνεται μία αυτή. Πηγαίνω, γιατί σας είπα πιο μπροστά που είχα παρέα, που είχα στην ηλικία μου ανθρώπους. Τώρα οι περισσότεροι είναι νέοι. Έχω λίγους να συναντήσω και πάω πάλι.
Panayitis brought a sense of authenticity that I've probably never seen when it comes to community. It was amazing to see everybody come together from the ages of 5 to 95 and share a space and share community and share food. Everybody would participate in making food during the day, and then at night everybody would sit down with their meal and their wine and their ouzo and just enjoy each other's company. The band would play all night long, and they would rarely take a break. The dancing circle that would form would contain dozens or hundreds of people arm in arm. When one person would leave, another person would join, and the circle just wouldn't die. These people were partying all night long until the wee hours of the next day. It was amazing to see the collective community come together and just have a good time, spend time together. Everybody just seemed to look forward to this time of celebration, of laughter, of joy, and it really was a gift to experience such an authentic form of community.
I mean, here's the thing. We are social beings. We need each other. And when we have community, when we have friends, when we have people that hold space for us, we tend to perform better. We tend to enjoy life more.
Community is the hidden secret that we don't often talk about enough. There are books on dating and how to optimize your dating and romantic life and marriage. There's so many books on finances, and we know to pay attention to that. There's so many books on health, but we rarely ever talk about the importance of friendship, this secret ingredient, friendship and community and tribe. And that's actually the magic sauce that allows our goals to happen, for us to stay accountable to what we want to do health-wise, and for us to actually truly be content and happy on a day-to-day basis.
Alzheimer's is going out of sight, just like autism. It's terrifying. I think it was something like 15% of people alive today can be expected to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's in their lifetime. That is terrifying.
When patients come to my office, one of the biggest things I assess for is how healthy is your mitochondria. And one clue to that is there premature aging? Things like wrinkling of the skin at an earlier age or graying of the hair, fatigue.
When we look at the mitochondria, I mean, they're the powerhouse. They're basically the battery of the cell. So how well is your car going to run if you don't have a battery? Really, nothing's going to happen. That's what you need, that spark to generate everything to get your car to move. Or you need that battery charge to get your phone to work. And if that battery is not producing energy, nothing's going to happen. And that's the same thing in the brain. When the mitochondria are not functioning optimally, everything just goes down. You can't get a neuron to fire properly.
Mitochondria basically behave like bacteria. So if we have 100 quadrillion of them, we have 100 quadrillion bacteria that are actually moving around our body. Now, the way they reproduce is by fission. They divide, right? Just like any bacteria do. And then the way they move about is they either fuse with other mitochondria, forming long strands for when you need lots of energy. And in your neurons, where there are long axonal strands, for example, for the delivery of signals in the nerve cell, then the mitochondria actually move up and down. So there's fusion, there's fission, there's movement, and then there's this phenomenon called mitophagy. So what happens when a mitochondrion actually divides is that the division is very uneven for the number of mitochondria that would go from one cell that's dividing to the other. Now, if there's a lot of damaged mitochondria that goes to one cell, then the mitochondria detect that or sense that, and it will send out signals such that the cell would commit suicide.
Mitophagy is an excellent process because it recognizes damaged mitochondria, and if mitochondria are damaged, they produce less ATP, and besides, they stimulate production of reactive oxygen species. If these mitochondria are eliminated, it will be really beneficial for cells and for organisms in general. Some cells can become dangerous for us. And if cell doesn't fulfill its function, it's better to kill it. In cancer, for example, apoptotic program is suppressed. That leads for uncontrolled growth of tissue. That's why if you stimulate cell death, apoptotic cell death, you might cure cancer. Apoptotic cell death is painless. I read that every day in our body, about 1.2 kilograms of cells die by apoptosis, but we don't feel it. But it's necessary form of cell death because cells divide, proliferate, and to keep shape and form of our organs, some cells should die. In cancer, as I mentioned, apoptosis is suppressed. But if we have too much apoptosis, this might lead to different neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. So it must be really balanced.
In the beginning of my cancer journey, I was really focused on not dying, you know? And then someone said, I met with a practitioner, and this practitioner in our first meeting, she said, you know, before we get started, I need to know, do you really want to live? And I was like, well, no one's ever asked me that before. I've never even asked myself, and I'm not even sure what the answer is. And that was a scary moment. I mean, for like a split second, it was kind of like my life was flashing before my eyes. And I was, on one hand, I was a little bit afraid that maybe I secretly had a death wish, right? And that maybe this cancer was my body manifesting this, you know, hidden death wish, me hating myself, being insecure, unhappy, right? And then I kind of had this little epiphany, which was, I have a choice here. Like, and I'm going to choose. Yes, I want to live, right? I'm making the choice to live. And so from that moment forward, everything I did was to promote health and healing in my body, right? It wasn't to kill cancer. It wasn't to not die, right? It was to live. So people know me online as Chris Beat Cancer, okay? But knowing what I know now, that's probably not what I would have called my website or my blog. Because even though I'm cancer-free, there's no cancer in my body, I don't look at cancer as something that you just beat or cure, right? I look at it as it's disease, it needs to be healed, but the risk factors in our diet and our environment and our lifestyle are so pervasive that if you want to stay cancer-free, if you want to live a long, healthy life and not die from cancer, then you have to be serious about prevention.
Our world and all those forces and pressures that we have cause us to live in a way that's not natural. And to the degree that technology can help us live more naturally, I'm all for it. There is, again, potential for these things to be useful, but you have to understand how to use them, that it's not a silver bullet. It's a part of more of a whole ecology of health behaviors that we need to engage with. And if it is, again, reinforcing a lifestyle pattern that itself is good, then I think technology can help us live more naturally. When it helps us live more like a technocrat and disconnected from our natural behaviors, then I think we get into trouble.
This is a test that tells us what the activity and health of the nervous system is. So there's very few, I don't know of any other assessment that a doctor can use that will give them that window, non-invasive, quick window into the health of the autonomic nervous system of a patient. So one thing we measure is how much of it we have, and that's important. However, HRV is also instantly changing and reflecting our emotional state. And that's independent of how much of it we have. We can be young and have a lot of it, a lot of variability, or older and less of it. But if we get frustrated or anxious or pissed off, whatever, basically the pattern of the rhythm of the heart, the HRV, becomes very chaotic and jerky looking. It's really amazing to see this, and you can hook yourself up to devices now and see this for yourself. On the other hand, when we're feeling things like compassion or appreciation, care, feeling good, right? For kids, we might say it's that feeling you have when you get a good deal at the mall, right? But that inner feeling, the heart rhythm has a very different pattern, and that's looks like a rolling hills or a sine wave pattern, and that's what we call coherence. And many studies, there have been over 300 independent studies now published on coherence that really clearly show that it's really the optimal state for reducing stress and really having good health, for facilitating the body's natural regenerative processes, and really keeping us healthy. The more coherent we are, the healthier we are.
That heart rate variability can give us a little bit of an objective guide as to the total what's called allostatic load. It's everything that's weighing on us, and we get one objective number. And usually when people graphically display it, it's a color. It's like a green, a yellow, or a red. And so when we work with athletes, if we're pushing them really hard and we're pushing them into an overtraining block of their preparation, If we start seeing some oranges or something, then we're not that worried because we know we're going to drop their training volume. But if people are continually burying themselves and they're getting sick and they're seeing retrograde performance and they're ignoring that objective, element of the heart rate variability, then we need to fix that. And that's where the HRV is so powerful in helping people to understand how are they handling all the stresses of life.
I feel for the average consumer out there who, here's the next greatest thing. It's marketed to you in a very effective and compelling way. Should I do this? Do I invest the money? Do I invest the time, etc.? So I think over time we'll see that, like everything else, the field's going to narrow. The ones that are really doing good work are going to end up emerging and will be sort of standardized. So I'm thrilled about the technology, but in the end, I think what people really need to do is to get a context for what their own philosophy about health is, and then act in alignment with that.
When we first met Hideko, we were amazed. She's the epitome of healthy aging, and her ability to interact with her environment through gardening and walking 2 or 3 kilometers to her friend's house, to read the paper without any glasses, and to function in a way that I've never seen before in a 97-year-old. And every morning she would have a routine of getting up and walking to the gate and opening the gate, grabbing the newspaper and coming back. You could tell that her routine was important to her, her garden was important to her, and these were the things that she lived for. Her daughter was telling us about how she would climb orange trees at 95 by herself. Her love for working in the garden and her ability to till up her soil and cut down sugarcane really blew us away and showed us what's possible at the age of 97 and really gave us an idea for a template of longevity or healthy aging. Even to this day, she still defies what you think she might be capable of. Her willingness to engage her environment is pretty remarkable at the age of 97.
Ma i giovani non lavorano oggi come prima. Prima facevamo un lavoro pesante e camminavamo a piedi. Ora si cammina in macchina. Ora diventati tutti, sono nati in macchina. Sono nati a cavallo, sono nati a sedia, diciamo. Ma allora erano nati in mezzo alla povera, per dire pace, lavoro e giustizia.
Ένα από όλα είναι λοιπόν να αγαπάς τους ανθρώπους και να σε αγαπάνε. Πρώτον. Δεύτερον, η διατροφή. Και τρίτον, να είσαι ευχαριστημένος με την εργασία που κάνεις. Να μην καταπιέζεσαι, να μην χορταίνεις, να δουλεύεις, ας πούμε, να περνάει η μέρα και να λες, μα τι πέρασε κιόλας, ας πούμε. Πιστεύω αυτό ότι είναι το α και το ω για κάθε άνθρωπο, όχι για μένα. Βέβαια και η διατροφή οπωσδήποτε παίζει ρόλο όταν δεν κάνεις καταχρήσεις. Γιατί δεν φτάνει ο άνθρωπος να ζήσει πολλά χρόνια, να είναι και γερός.
Essere sereni, calmi, trattare con tutti, voler bene a tutti e così dialogare sempre, però sempre essere calmi e voler bene a tutti, anche aiutare anche quando si può ad altri.
Πρώτα, ειρηνική ζωή. Δεύτερον, καλή διατροφή. Απλή, μεσογειακή, όχι πολλά κρέατα, όχι αλκοόλ πολύ και γενικά αυτό που λέμε υγιεινή διατροφή και προπάντων όχι στρες κλπ.
Είχα σαν αρχή μου είχα να περνάω καλά με όλο τον κόσμο.
cose. Io auguro sempre di obbedire all'anziano che sa per esempio una certa esperienza e già sa dove mettere le mani.
Δεν σκέφτηκα ποτέ μου το θάνατο. Αυτός δεν τον αποφεύγω με τίποτα. Και το Θεό μπάρβα να έχω. Άμα θα έρθει η ώρα μου, σκέφτομαι μόνο τι δουλειές θα κάνω.
Pura vida es sentirse uno bien. Pues es pura vida es sentirse bien en todo, no tener problemas, no tener nada. Y eso es pura vida. Me siento pura vida.